The US is considering taking equity stakes in Australian rare earth projects to counter Beijing's stranglehold over the sector. Anthony Albanese will meet Donald Trump next week to discuss a critical minerals package. The deal may include US investment through the Pentagon and a new floor price for rare earths used in high-tech weaponry. The Treasurer Jim Chalmers, he's in Washington this week and will meet his American counterpart Scott Bessent, who yesterday called for the US and its allies to decouple their economies from China.
This is China versus the world. It's not a US-China problem. Good news is that this is IMF week. A lot of my counterpart, or all my counterparts, are here. We're going to be speaking with our European allies, with Australia, with Canada, with India, and the Asian democracies. And we're going to have a fulsome group response to this because bureaucrats in China cannot manage the supply chain or the manufacturing process for the rest of the world.
China currently controls about 90% of the world's rare earths, which are also used in the manufacture of computers, electric vehicles. It's everywhere. Treasurer Jim Chalmers has responded to Mr Bessent's comments while talking up Australia's own deposits of rare earth reserves.
We know that American companies desperately need critical minerals, and Australia is very well placed to service that need. This will be an important part of the discussions that I have with Kevin Hassett tonight. No doubt it will be part of the discussions that Prime Minister Albanese has with President Trump next week. The views that Secretary Bessent expressed is not the first time they've expressed views of that nature. I think when it comes to critical minerals, we are concerned that the market for critical minerals is not as reliable and robust as it could be when it comes to these supply chains.
So as we await a deal on that, joining us live is the former Donald Trump trade advisor, Kellyanne Shaw. Good to see you, Kellyanne. Thanks as always for your time. So going back to Scott Bessent, first of all, was he serious about economically decoupling from China, as he said, or is that just a negotiating tactic?
Well, good morning, and thanks so much for having me on. So I think the Secretary has been very clear that the United States doesn't want to decouple from China. They want to de-risk. But if China insists on moving forward with this incredibly aggressive move to effectively control global technology supply chains, that they're in fact decoupling, not the United States. So that's the predicament we're in, and that's really what he was talking about. This is China's move, not the United States.
And how might Australia benefit from this, from a rare earths deal with the US? I mean, as you just heard, there is talk of the US taking part ownership of Australian rare earth projects. Would that be the start of it?
Well, there's certainly a lot of interest, and there have been discussions between both governments involving potential stockpiles, offtake agreements, floor prices. And I think the United States is more motivated than ever to partner with like-minded allies who are being faced with the same threat the United States is. And so Australia, of course, is a source country for many of these critical minerals and rare earths. And I think that there's a lot of creative thinking that could go into this type of partnership, including this idea of an equity stake that the United States has pursued with a number of other companies. But when it comes to these bilateral negotiations and whatever might be achieved during this leader-level bilat next week, I would be surprised if we didn't see some sort of outcome here.
And with that said, I mean, when it comes to President Trump, has he got his eyes on our rare earths, and how attractive is that?
Well, we have plenty of rare earths in the United States as well. Rare earths aren't actually that rare. It has more to do with the refining and processing. That's the real bottleneck. But Australia does have access to source minerals that the United States doesn't, or in commercially significant quantities. So there's definitely a partnership to be made there. But I view this very much as a partnership between the United States, Australia, and other allies around the world. This is a China versus everyone else situation.
And like you said there, it's the refining capabilities of China. It's been doing the hard work, the work that no one else has wanted to do in the previous decades, right? That's why it's got such a huge control over rare earths globally.
I certainly think that that is part of it. There are environmental laws and other types of regulations that make getting approval for that processing and refinement very difficult in the United States and in other Western countries. But that said, this is part of China's strategic decades-long industrial plan that they have wanted to dominate the rare earth and critical mineral sectors for decades. And they have done things like lower prices as soon as a new entrant comes into the market to make it not economically viable for them to participate, and other types of forms of price manipulation, subsidies, and all sorts of unfair trade practices to maintain their dominance on this sector. And now we're seeing this chokehold really play out.
Yeah, so given the hard work and the time that China has put in on this, is it likely to step back though?
I don't think China has any interest in stepping back, but what you're seeing is a renewed interest and fervor in the United States, in the private sector, and among allied nations to try to finally do something about it. I've never seen this level of motivation that I see today, and I think that what China announced last week in terms of these expanded restrictions under the entire U.S. government.
So is it too late, though, I mean, to push back? I mean, or would Donald Trump's threat of 100% tariffs do the job, do the trick?
Well, I think what you're hearing the administration say is they have more up their sleeve than just tariffs. And certainly the president talks about these very high tariffs. And I think the view is in Washington is that these 145% tariffs that we had on China back in the spring are actually what brought China to the table in terms of negotiating a de-escalatory package. But that said, we're talking about the world's two largest economies, the two superpowers, both have chokeholds and choke points on one another. I don't think the United States wants to move forward and exercise them. I think they actually want to see de-escalation here, but it's certainly an option outside of tariffs.
Kellyanne Shaw, as always, thank you for your time. It's good to chat. Talk to you again soon.